Hello everybody, welcome back to 89 Games, and today we are starting the Frosthaven character guide series. So we just finished up with Gloomhaven. I'm currently doing a stream series of Frosthaven, so along with that I'm actually going to go ahead and do the character guides too for the 6 starting characters and the 2 characters that are unlockable right now in early access. So for right now, let's start with our starting characters, and we're going to start with the Drifter today. Now, if you want to see him in action and how he actually plays, I am actually using him in my current playthrough. If you're interested in that, I'll have a link down below. But otherwise, let's jump right into the Drifter today. So starting out, he has 10 health. He does have the tank level health. He can play as a tank for sure. And if you look at his abilities, he has pretty much everything he's pretty good at except for control. So as a starting character, one of your first characters to play, he is one of the easiest. He's excellent for beginners because he's very easy to understand. His cards are very straightforward, and even his class mechanic is pretty easy to understand. And you can kind of play any way you want. You can play defensively, tanky, you can do melee attacks, you can do ranged, you even have decent mobility, and then you support. So you can play this character in just about any way that you want. So let's look at that class mechanic before we jump into the cards. So here it is, the Drifter class info. So you have persistent bonuses with use counters, which will greatly enhance your capabilities. And then whenever a bonus is triggered by an attack, a movement, whatever triggers it, the counter increases. But then you have abilities that actually decrease that counter so that you can keep that bonus for a lot longer. And then you also gain experience from using these bonuses when you're going forward. So when you actually use the bonus, you can gain XP, and then you can set it back one, and then when you use it again, you'd regain that XP again. So he also can really rack up the XP as well. So with all that said, let's go ahead and go look at his cards now. So we'll look at the cards, and then we'll look at some items for starting items to get started with, and then look into his perks as well. So first off, we're going to start right up here with the level 1 cards. We're going to skip over the X cards when we get to them and come back to those at the end. But for now, I'm actually going to start with Crushing Weight here, just because this will help give you an idea of how his active bonuses and these different things work. So Crushing Weight top is on your next 6 melee attacks, you gain +2 attack. Alright, so it's a persistent bonus, but you have this 6 uses of this, right? So every time you attack, this gets used, you get to do +2 attack. This is really powerful, by the way. This does a lot of damage. However, you only have 6 uses unless you're resetting it somehow. So we'll talk about that once we get to the bottom of this card, actually. So let's go ahead and do that. So the bottom of this one is a heal 2 at range 2. Convenient. You can heal yourself, heal an ally with it. So there's kind of that support role there. And then the second half of the bottom is regain a use of one of your active bonuses. So this is how you would regain a use of, say you weren't using the melee one, so you had the bottom of this card to use. You're using a different active bonus somewhere. You could reset, take that bonus back 1, and then you could have more uses of that ability, essentially. If you play it correctly, you shouldn't ever actually run out of your persistent bonuses. You should be able to keep them all throughout the entire match, especially if you're only using 2 of them. If you're using more than 2, it can get a little harder to manage all of them, but if you're using 2, you can probably get through most scenarios without ever losing your active bonuses. So that's Crushing Weight. So now let's go ahead and jump in and do these in order, starting with Bloodletting here, which is an attack 3, and if you kill the enemy, you regain a use of one of your active bonuses with it. So I like to pair this one with Crushing Weight. So if we already got this active, this actually becomes an attack 5, and especially in the early game, you can kill a lot of enemies with an attack 5, and if they've taken damage at all, you should definitely be able to kill them. So then you can get this active bonus back. So I use a charge of Crushing Weight to do the attack, and then I immediately get that charge back. So this is a great way to keep recycling that point and keep Crushing Weight active. The bottom of it is an attack 1 and wound, which the wound is nice. If you're already adjacent to someone, you don't have to move. Then you can use this bottom to get an extra attack and wound off. And remember, if you're using Crushing Weight, this would actually be attack 3 and wound, not just attack 1. So Crushing Weight really does add in to the damage that you can do in melee with the Drifter. If you are playing a melee build with the Drifter, absolutely use Crushing Weight every single time. Now, Continuous Health is the next one here. It is an attack 2 at range 2 on the top, and then you regain a use of one of your active bonuses. So again, this is a good way to just, get a range attack off, and then you can regain a use of a bonus. Now, this is a range attack, so this would not work with Crushing Weight, because this only affects melee attacks. There is a different card that we'll talk about in a little bit that actually affects your ranged attacks. So that's why I say you kind of got to choose a build. Do you want to be melee? Do you want to be ranged? It's a good idea to have kind of a main build in mind, And you don't have to stick to that every single scenario necessarily. You could switch it up, but it's a good idea to kind of have an idea of how you want to play so you know what cards, like if I'm going to use Crushing Weight, if I'm going to be melee attacking, I want this one. If I'm not going to be melee attacking, then I may want a different one. So then the bottom of continuous health here is on your next 6 heals, you gain +2 health. Now, do not underestimate the power of this one either. This is actually really, really strong, and this works on your long rests as well, not just when you get healed by another source. So every long rest when this is active is actually a heal 4, and then any other heal you do to yourself, like if you use the bottom of Crushing Weight to heal yourself here, it's heal 4, not heal 2. Don't underestimate the power of that. That really helps you tank. Rather than being a shield tank, you're actually a sponge tank when you do this, but it can really help keep you in the fight a lot longer. So this actually is a really good active bonus to have turned on as well, especially if you're fighting in melee, because you can get health back quite often. So then we already talked about Crushing Weight, so let's go over to Deadly Shot. This is an attack 1 at range 4 and poison. So again, a decent attack to just get that poison off. You may or may not do damage with it only being attack 1, but if we're using the ranged card, which we'll see in a little bit, this would be a little bit better. And then the bottom of this one is a move 4. So that's good because our mobility is a little low with the Drifter unless we use, there is an active bonus that affects mobility. But if you're not using that active bonus, then you're going to have a lot of move 2s, maybe a couple move 3s, not a lot of move 4s. So this move 4 is nice to have here. So the next one is an X card, so we'll skip over that. We'll go on down here to Draining Arrows. So Draining Arrows is attack 1, target 3, range 2, and muddle. So this is actually really good because of the target 3. I mean, target 3 and muddling 3 enemies, that can actually negate, or not negate, but mitigate a lot of damage that's coming your way. And again, if we're using a certain card, which we're going to see here very soon, this would actually be a lot better than that. And then the bottom of this one is a move 3. If you're adjacent to exactly one enemy, you regain the use of one of your active bonuses. So again, this one's a nice one that I like to combo with Bloodletting. So I can move up to that one enemy. As long as they don't have any other enemies that I'm adjacent to, I would get a use of a bonus back. So say I'm using, my heal bonus here, I could get used to that back, and then I can attack him with Bloodletting and get a use of Crushing Weight back. So that's a good little combo to use there. And then moving on now to Precision Aim. So this is the ranged card that we've been talking about, that I've been suggesting for if you're going to do a ranged build. On your next 6 ranged attacks, you add +1 range and +1 damage. So this is another persistent bonus. And this, like I said, this turns Deadly Shot into an attack 2 at range 5 and poison, which is a lot better. It turns Draining Arrows into attack 2 on 3 targets, plus range 3 on all of those attacks. Now, it should be noted, though, that every single one of these attacks counts as a single attack, which means you'd use a charge of this for every one of these 3 attacks on Draining Arrows. So you have to be careful with Precision Aim here. You could use it up really quickly, because these would all count as individual attacks if you're using Draining Arrows and Precision Aim. So just be aware of that. But if you want to go a ranged build, absolutely you can do that. Use this active bonus instead of using Crushing Weight. The bottom of this one is a move 2, and you regain the use of one of your active bonuses. So even if you're not using the top of this, it could be good to hang on to this just because you can do a basic move and get a use of a bonus back for free. So that's really nice. The next one, Prudent Preparation here, is a great tanking card. Just shield 1, retaliate 1. So, if you don't have a whole lot going on, or you're not going to be able to reach an enemy, just move up, shield, retaliate, and there's your turn. You can do a little bit of damage with the retaliate, hopefully. Take less damage with the shield active. And then the bottom of this one is a heal 2 at range 3. So another good support card or a way to heal yourself. Plus the initiative on this one's really nice at a low 14. And then moving on to Relentless here, this one, the top of it, regain 2 uses of your active bonuses. So, this is really good for getting a bunch of bonuses back. Now, this does grant individual different ones. You can't use both of these on a single active bonus. You have to do it on 2 different active bonuses and get 1 charge of each one back. So keep that in mind, that you can't just use this to reset, like Crushing Weight, back 2 spaces. It would only work 1 on that one, and then you'd have to use the other regain use on a different active ability. And then the bottom is on the next 6 enemy attacks within 2 targeting you, you gain Retaliate 2 at range 2. So this is the way, like, if I just want to be tanky and I'm not too worried about doing a lot of damage, I just want to, do damage through retaliate and stuff. This is actually a really good card too, a really good active bonus. I don't like it quite as well as the health one. If I'm using crushing weight, I like health. I like to just go up and smack them, do a bunch of damage, and get a bunch of health back. Although this is still a good one, and you could have 3, even 4 active bonuses. And in fact, one of our masteries, which we'll talk about here in a minute, does require you to have 4 of these active bonuses at the same time. So you can use 4 active bonuses. That's still a hand size of 8. Like, that's okay. And you wouldn't have to have all 4 of those active at the beginning of the game. You could wait until halfway through or to the last room to get the other 2 active. So you could have this retaliate along with healing more and doing more damage, and you really are going to like pump up your output, your damage output to the enemies. So this is a really good one, retaliate 2 at range 2. And then the next one, sustained momentum, is an attack 2, but you regain the use of an active bonus, and that's just, you just regain the use. And remember too that any of these that have this attack and then they have a line right here between these 2 sections means that these are separate parts of the card. So you don't have to do this attack to actually regain a use of an active bonus. You can just skip the attack and then just regain a use. So remember that too. And also this attack 2 is actually probably attack 5 because we're probably using crushing weight. So attack 5, you get that, use of crushing weight back right away. Really good combo. And the bottom of this one is your move one. So your move active ability. So on your next 6 move abilities, gain +2 move. Here we go with, really good mobility. And this turns any of our moves into at least a move 4. So, if you have a move 4 already, it's move 6. This helps with your mobility. So if you're on a map where you really need the mobility, absolutely use the bottom of this one and you won't have any issues with mobility anymore because your basic move will be a move 4. And then the next one is Unbreakable. The top is just another regain 2 uses of active bonuses. And then the bottom is on the next 6 sources of damage from attacks targeting you, you gain 1 shield. So this is the shield card, which I've actually found, I liked this one originally, but I've actually found that the health one is actually better than the shield. Because as long as you can heal yourself, if you take damage, this mitigates 1 damage that you take from an attack, right? You get hit for 3 or 4, so you get hit for 4, you shield 1, okay, you took 3 damage. Or if you're using this one, you got hit for 4, and then you use a heal 2, and now you heal for 4. So instead of being down 3, I'm actually right where I started, back up to full health or whatever the case may be. So as long as you're thinking to heal yourself, this one actually is better than the shield one. But if you don't want to have to think about it too much, then you can use the shield one just to help, lessen damage. And this combos really well with using something like Prudent Preparation because you'd have 2 shield and the retaliate. And again, if you just want to play tanky, like I don't care about damage as much as just dishing out retaliate damage and shielding, then you could use the bottom of Unbreakable here, the bottom of Relentless. You could always have shield 1 and retaliate 2. When you use this up here, you'd have retaliate 3 and shield 2. So again, there are so many different ways you could play the Drifter, from range attacks, melee attacks, just tanking and retaliating, or even there's even an argument maybe to be made for a support role by using your heals. There's not as many of those, but if you just want to be like a heal tank, you could just play the shield, retaliate, and then use a bunch of heal cards on your allies. So the next one is Vile Assault. Now this is a really strong card. It's attack 2 poison and then attack 2 wound. So you poison first, which means that this second attack is actually going to be attack 3 because of the poison on the enemy, as long as they're not immune to it, of course. But if you're using Crushing Weight and you have 2 charges of it left, this becomes attack 5 poison, and then attack 4, sorry. Attack 4 poison, and then the second one would end up being attack 5 because of the poison, and then wound. This is a great, like, boss killer move, or maybe an elite, some tough enemy. Great way to take them out. However, the bottom of this is really nice to keep around because it's a move 2 and then heal 2. So if you're using like Sustained Momentum's bottom here and you got the +2 move, that makes us 4 move. If you're using the healing active ability, then now we have move 4, heal 4. Again, really good for helping keep us in the fight. And then finally, the last level 1 card, Violent Inheritance, is this top is really nice for, again, if Crushing Weight's active, this is attack 3 and then loot 1. So you use this to finish an enemy off, right? They only have like 2 health left. Hit them with attack 3, and then you can immediately loot what they drop without having to use a turn to move on to that space. So I really like this one. Or, you know, just to loot a bunch of stuff. It's a bunch of stuff around you. It's a top loot, which means I can move first, then into a, you know, pile of 3 or 4 loot bags, pick them all up at once. So I do like Violent Inheritance for its flexibility. And then the bottom is a move 4, attack 3 at range 3. But that is a burn. I don't think I've ever actually used the bottom of this one because I don't really think it's worth it to burn usually, especially when I am typically using Crushing Weight. So I'm already doing high damage anyway. It's not really necessary to use the bottom of this one. And then again, if we're using the mobility increase, then, you know, we're already getting move 4 anyway. So that covers the level 1 cards. Let's go ahead and look at these X cards now. So Destructive Fury is an attack 3, and it does in this like cone pattern out from you, and it is a burn. However, this would be considered a melee attack. This should be considered a melee attack because you have to be adjacent to the pattern. So Crushing Weight should work on this. Although remember, these would all be individual attacks. I think it is a pattern, so maybe not, but I'm pretty sure they still would consider each of these individual attacks. So if you had 5 enemies, you could actually hit with this, then you would attack 5 on all of them, but you'd be down to 1 charge on Crushing Weight. And then the bottom of it is attack 3 at range 2 in the triangle pattern. So both of these are burns. I don't ever use this one. I don't think it's really worth it for the burn, considering, I mean, I can go around and be hitting things for, you know, attack 5, attack 4, focus more on single target damage and tanking for my team than trying to be a AoE damage dealer, because we don't have a lot of AoE, so I don't really think it's worth holding up a card slot to keep this one in. The other ones though, this card here, Fortitude, that one I do like. It's attack 3, pierce 2, and then before any other bonuses are used, you can lose one of your active bonuses to gain range 2 on this. So that means you can just use a charge of, say, you're healing here. I'm just going to use a charge of it without actually getting the heal out of it to give this a range to this attack. Which, the way the digital did this is this actually considers this melee attack having range 1. So when it says +2 range, it actually makes this a range 3 attack. That's how it's done it for me in digital. So remember that, you know, if you need it, you know, here's a range 3, attack 3, or it's just attack 3 at melee, but either way it has its pierce, which is really good when you're fighting those shielded enemies. Plus remember, if you do this as a melee attack, it becomes attack 5. So attack 5, pierce 2, really good. And then the bottom, whenever you kill an enemy, regain a use of one of your active bonuses. So this is another way to get more of your bonuses back. This itself is actually an active card, a persistent card, but it stays out there. It doesn't actually run out. So I have been using Fortitude as one of my cards, mainly because of this attack right here and, of course, the Pierce. And then the last one, No Remorse. If you want to go more of a support role, this is a good one for a heal 3, range 3 to help out your allies. The bottom is a move 3, attack 3, and then move 2. It's a burn, though, so not a lot of usefulness for this. This would be a very kind of situational thing if you wanted to have this one, but I don't think it's worth it to burn. I'd rather use active bonuses than just burn cards outright, especially with the Drifter. So that covers all the level 1 cards and kind of the idea of how I use them. So let's go look at all our leveled cards. Now, we can't actually pick these because we'd actually have to level up to do that, which we can't right now, but we can actually look and see all of the cards for all the levels. So we're still going to discuss them. And keep in mind that I have played the board game version of Frosthaven and have played it through completion of the main campaign. So I am familiar with every character in the game, and I have either played or seen all of these characters played. So level 2, Shockwave or Ever Forward. Shockwave, on your next 6 melee attacks, 1 enemy adjacent to your target suffers 2 if possible. And then this is a persistent card. This is a good way to do splash damage. Rather than use a burn card to do it, like a single burn, use this persistent bonus as a Drifter, because every time you hit an enemy, everything adjacent to it will suffer 2 damage. So you can kind of get some free splash damage off on enemies. It's not a bad card. And then the bottom is a move 3 and shield 1. So again, really good for a defensive move. You just need to move up and get in position, but you can't hit anything. Protect yourself. by using this card here with the move 3 and shield 1. The other level 2 card is Ever Forward. It is an attack 2 at range 3, and then you give yourself Regenerate, and then the bottom is a heal 1, targets 3, and range 3. So again, it's a good support card. You could spread that healing around. Now, I do believe your heal card, though, yeah, on your next 6 heals, gain +2 heal. I'm pretty sure this only affects healing directly on you. I don't think this gets added to heals that you do to your allies. Although I'm not sure, it may. I've never actually played him that way, so I don't know. So if you do, let me know down in the comments if this also applies to healing your allies or not. But with that said, Ever Forward, you know, this is more of a support card. We can attack 2 at range 3 with it, and then we can give Regenerate to ourselves. You know, Regenerate gives you 1 health at the start of each of your turns. It can cancel out things like Poison and Wound and Brittle. Out of these 2 cards, the way I play the Drifter, I prefer this because I usually use him as a melee tank. So I prefer this card here. That's the one I would normally take. But if you're trying to play a support role or do the ranged role, then this one might make a lot of sense for that. The next one at level 3, we've got Fierce Barrage and Dual Bow. So Fierce Barrage is an attack 2 on this little pattern here. So 2 enemies adjacent to you, you could hit with attack 2. And remember, if you have Crushing Weight, these would each be attack 5. And then the bottom of this is on your next 6 range attacks, you gain 1 target. So back to playing the ranged role. If we're doing a ranged role, we could use this card along with the other one that gave us 1 damage and 1 range. And we could add, you know, every time we do a range attack, we would add a target, or we'd be hitting 2 enemies with extra damage, extra range. But I feel like you'd use these bonuses up really, really quickly, so you'd really have to keep an eye on your active bonuses and how many that you've been using. And then the other card here is Dual Bow. It is an attack 2, target 2, and range 3 on the top. And then the bottom is a regain 4 uses of 2 of your active bonuses. So I think this sounds like it would be 4 uses on 2 different bonuses. So this is a good way to recharge your active bonuses. It is a burn to do it, but you know, if they're getting down, they're almost gone, you could get 2 of them way back up almost to full with this. So, you know, not bad. That could come in handy in a pinch. The top here, though, is a nice little range attack. It's an attack 2. It's target 2 with a decent range 3. You know, if you have nothing else you can do or you can't get in melee range, this is a nice attack to have. Out of these 2 cards, even playing the melee build, I actually went with Dual Bow in the playthrough I'm doing right now, just because the bottom of this doesn't apply if I'm not using range attacks, which I'm not. And the top of this, sometimes getting 2 enemies like this doesn't always happen, so it's kind of hard to plan out a card like this. Plus, this would use 2 charges. So I like this one because, you know, this gives me some flexibility with a range attack. And then the bottom is just a, you know, oh crap moment when I really need to get some bonuses back. I can use that. So I took level 3. I took Dual Bow at level 3. Moving on to level 4, we have Chunk of Flesh and Gift of the Prey. So Chunk of Flesh is an attack 2, and then heal 2, target or range 1, and then regain use of 1 of your active bonuses. And then the bottom, on the next 6 sources of damage from attacks targeting you, you gain 2 shield. So now we're getting a little better with the shield. If we got 2 shield permanently we're walking around with, that's pretty good. That's some pretty good damage mitigation there. The top of this one too, a really great melee attack plus the heal. I mean, this just does everything for you. We could attack 5. We could attack 4 if we have Crushing Weight on, which I think I said these would be attack 5. They would not. They would be attack 4. I think I misspoke earlier. I keep thinking that Crushing Weight is an attack 3 bonus for some reason, but it's only attack 2 bonus. So yeah, anyway, but this would be attack 4, and if we have the heal one on, we could heal 4. So we could attack 4, then we could heal ourselves for 4, and then we could get 1 of those back immediately. Or you could use the bottom and do the 2 shield. So that card's pretty cool. Gift of the Prey is an attack 3 at range 3, and if you kill the enemy, you regain the use of 1 of your active bonuses. So if we're using the ranged active bonus, this would actually be attack 4 at range 4. So that's actually really good because you probably could kill an enemy with that and be able to get the use of this back right away. The bottom is a move 4, and if you've killed an enemy this round, you regain the use of 1 of your active bonuses. Again, just another great way to get bonuses back, plus a move 4 is really great for your mobility there. I think for me, if I'm playing the melee role though, that Chunk of Flesh would be the card I would take here at level 4. So with that said, let's move on to level 5, Survivalist and Breakthrough. On your next 6 heals, if the target does not have ward, it gains ward. In this case, it is the target as well, so that would be you or your allies. So now you're adding ward, which halves damage. The next damage taken, it halves it. You're adding ward to your heals. So that's actually really cool. So if you're playing more of a support role, that's an excellent card to take. And it is a persistent bonus. The bottom is a move 2, loot 1, and then you heal X, where X is twice the number of bags and Hex is looted. Okay, so, you know, if you loot 3 bags, then this is a heal 6. It's a heal on yourself. It looks like yeah, it's just a heal self. But still, move 2, loot, heal, not bad. The other card, Breakthrough, attack 4, pierce 2. Before other bonuses, you can lose one of them to wound as well with the attack. And then the bottom is a move 4, and if you're adjacent to at least 2 enemies, you regain the use of an active bonus. Again, I think if we're going for the melee build that I would normally do and that I'm doing now, I would probably go with Breakthrough here, because attack 4 and pierce 2 is really good. If you got crushing weight on it, it's attack 6 with pierce 2. That's really strong. That's really good for killing those shielded enemies that can really be a pain otherwise. And then the bottom also would be good for that case when there are, you know, enemies, 2 enemies in a spot that you're going to. Great, then you get an active bonus back. Okay, so level 6, accurate strikes and consume stamina. On accurate strikes, we have on your next 6 attacks targeting enemies with shield, you gain pierce. So this is the kind of card that you might want to have, but not use every scenario. Like if you're going into a scenario where you know there's a lot of shielded enemies, then you would want to take this one, because we're getting pierce 3 on all of our attacks. That is awesome for shielded enemies. However, if the enemies aren't shielded, this is completely pointless and you wouldn't want to use it. The bottom is a move 2, and then all your attacks this round gain advantage. Advantage is always very nice, especially if you're about to do a big attack. So I see the utility in this card, but the top of it is definitely situational. Consume Stamina is an attack 2 at range 4, heal X at range 4, where X is the amount of damage suffered by the targets of the attack ability. And it does say targets, which makes me think that if you had the add target active ability on, and you attacked 2, then you would get to add those 2 damage amounts that those 2 enemies took together to get your heal. But I'm not sure. I'd have to experiment. I'd have to test that. But, you know, again, here's a nice little, I can attack, and then I can use what I attacked with, basically the damage I did, to heal myself. Or heal an ally, because it is range 4. So it looks like there's a good argument for the ranged and support roles to kind of be mixed together. You could be a ranged support character. The bottom here is a move 2, and then retaliate 2. Whenever an adjacent enemy dies this round, you regain use of one of your active bonuses. So, you know, if you know you're going to have 2 or 3 enemies die on you this turn, you move right up to them so you can get a bunch of bonuses back. That could be really useful. Plus, this is a retaliate 2 after the move. So, if we have our retaliate card active, that becomes retaliate 4. Retaliate 4. That's ridiculous. Again, you know, really good strategy here if you're kind of playing more of the tanky, let them come to me and die on me kind of thing. So out of these 2 cards, I don't know. You know, playing the melee build, this one, you know, just to have an option to have another range attack in there might not be too bad. I do like the bottom with the move and retaliate. That does fit with the melee build really well. But then this one is, again, great for shielded enemies. And then the bottom would be useful all the time, though, because getting advantage is always good. And I don't know. I think I might take this one if I were to take it, like, playing the melee build. Just because, you know, we could throw this in when there are shielded enemies. And there are quite a few shielded enemies in Frosthaven. So, it may not be a bad idea to have this one, even if it's just in reserve, just for when we need it. Okay, and then at level 7, we have Like the Wind and Unending Fight. So Like the Wind, immediately after your next 6 heal abilities, you perform move 3 with jump. Wow, okay. So there's a huge mobility boost. And this isn't well, it is persistent. It's got 6 uses. Because after your next 6 heal abilities, you get to move 3 with jump. That could be crazy useful in ways that you wouldn't be able to think of without actually doing it, if that makes any sense. So this might be a fun one to take just to have an experiment with and see how useful or not useful this actually is. The bottom is a move 3. For each ally you move through during this move ability, you regain use of one of your active bonuses. So that can be really good for getting bonuses back if you can move through your entire party. Because you could use boots, or maybe you have the movement active ability on, so this would actually be, you know, move 5. You can move through all your allies and get a bunch of your uses back. Unending Fight, the top is attack 2, move 3, then attack 2. So this could potentially be attack 4, move 5, attack 4 if you got the right bonuses active. The bottom is regain 3 uses of 3 of your active bonuses. So again, it's another burn, but getting 3 uses of 3 bonuses back is pretty strong. And as far as the card I would take, it would probably end up being this one if I'm doing the melee build, just because it's got the melee attacks, the mobility. It's really nice. Plus, again, this is a great saver if you're not doing very well at managing your uses, or if you're just using a lot of big multi-attacks. Okay, and then moving on to level 8, Against All Odds and Inevitable Conclusion. So Against All Odds is attack 1, targets all enemies within 2 hexes. For each enemy targeted with the attack ability, regain the use of one of your active bonuses. This, I think this would be considered a melee attack because it doesn't have a range on it. So this should work with Crushing Weight, which means you would actually be attacking 3, all enemies within 2 hexes. That's really good. I mean, because that'd be a lot of damage you'd be spreading around. And then, of course, for each one targeted, you actually get a bonus use back. So, yeah, if you use Crushing Weight here and hit 4 enemies with this, you would also get all 4 uses of those back right away. That's actually not bad, as long as that works the way I think it should work. And then the bottom is the next 6 times an enemy enters a hex adjacent to you, that enemy suffers 3 damage. So this isn't even a retaliate. This is just they move next to you and they suffer 3 damage. So think about this. If they move next to you, they suffer 3 damage. If you have the retaliate ability on, they attack you, they suffer 2 more damage. And then you could potentially have another, retaliate top active or something. I mean, you could be doing 6 just passive damage to enemies. No rolling for modifiers or anything, just straight up damage. So again, there is a argument to be made for a role where you just stand in the middle of things and let them die on you without actually ever attacking. So I like that one. This next one, Inevitable Conclusion, is attack 4, range 2 in this huge triangle pattern here. And then before other bonuses, you can lose 1 to immobilize all the targets in the area. Now this is a burn. It is a big area attack though, and it would be attack 5, range 3 with the range bonus on. That could be good. If you're playing the range build, this would be a good way to hit a bunch of enemies at once. I still don't like it being a burn though, because like I said, with the Drifter, rather than just straight up burn cards, I'd rather just activate more of my persistent abilities and just make me stronger every single turn rather than just on one turn. And then the bottom is an attack 3 poison. So that's not bad. Attack 3 with the status effect on it, it's pretty good. It'll show on the bottom, so if you're already adjacent to an enemy, you can really kind of dish out the damage, do some burst damage with a top attack and then a bottom attack. But out of these two, with the melee build, I think I would go with this one for sure. Against all odds. And then finally we reach level 9. Let's see what we got at level 9. So we got Everlasting and Use Every Part. Everlasting is prevent the next 4 sources of 4 or less damage you would suffer. Interesting. So this is an active bonus. It only lasts 4 times instead of 6, but 4 or less damage. So this prevents small damage. If someone hits you with attack 6, this is still you're still going to get hurt. This doesn't actually take effect. So this protects you from chip damage, essentially. Or, if you're using the shield cards, you could potentially have 3 shield. So this would then negate the rest of the damage that gets past the shields. So that's an interesting one. And then the bottom is a heal 3, range 3, regenerate, and strengthen. And then you can lose a bonus to also add a target. So that's not bad. Again, if you're playing a support role, this is really, really good for just giving some heals out there to your party, giving regenerate, or yourself. The strengthen's really nice, especially if you use it on yourself, because you would get it for this turn and the next. And then the other one is Use Every Part. Attack 4, range 4, and then you heal 4, targeting all allies adjacent to at least one enemy targeted with the attack ability. So, yeah, you hit an enemy with attack 4, and then everybody that's around him would get healed 4. So if you're not playing the tank role and somebody else is, and you got 2 other tanks in the party or 2 other melee characters, and they're up against them, you'd heal them 4 and still hit the enemy for 4 as well. So that's actually really nice. And then the bottom is a move 3, and then attack X, where X is the number of hexes you moved during the move ability. So if we're using our bonus, we could get this up to 5. There may be ways to do even more, like items. You could use boots. You get this up to 6, 7. So you get a move and an attack on the bottom, and then plus whatever top you want to use as well. So that actually is really strong if you think about the fact that that is a move and attack on the same side of the card. So out of these two, playing a melee build, I'm thinking I would go with this one, mostly for this bottom, but I can see this top coming in handy as well, just to help allies out and heal them up. So there, that covers all the cards through level 9 for the Drifter. So let's go ahead and look at some items now. So we'll go back to the main screen. Now, I actually can't look at the shop to show you what's there. So there's not really a whole lot you can pick from in the beginning. So we're just going to talk about recommended starter items. You get 30 gold to spend to get your starter items. If you don't use all 30 of the gold, you lose whatever's left of it. So in this case, leather armor and the shield are both 15. So that's what I would equip Drifter with in the very beginning. If you're, especially if you're playing him as a tank, leather armor to give disadvantage on an attack when it comes to you, and then the shield just to mitigate some damage. That's good starting equipment. And then he is a tank, so later on I would upgrade this to, later on you can craft hide armor, which gives you 2 uses of disadvantage, and then later on you can add armor that actually gives you shield. So just keep upgrading defensive armor for sure. Boots early on, the best thing you can do is probably just some movement to increase his movement a little bit, especially if you don't plan on using the move active ability very much, then you definitely want to add in some boots to help you with mobility. And then as far as hand items, the shield, obviously, like I said, and then any kind of weapon that you can find early on that is a one-handed item. That way you can carry your shield as well. And then when it comes to potions, potions are just going to depend on what you get when you get it, because you actually have to craft potions in Frosthaven from materials that you find in scenarios. So I would recommend probably a health potion or maybe a stamina potion, but you'd have to see if that's what you get unlocked or not. So that takes care of that. Let's look at his perks now. So perks are a little interesting in Frosthaven. They're a lot better than they were in Gloomhaven. They do a lot more interesting things where it's not just about taking out negatives. There's a lot of other factors that go into picking your perks. So if we go down here and let's actually look at the special ones first. So these ones that kind of have this blue behind them with these different icons are your character specific perks that do certain things based on like your character's actual mechanics and things. So for instance, this first one is Scavenger. At the end of each scenario, you draw an additional loot card. So if you pick this perk, you just get extra loot every scenario no matter what, which is really nice, especially when you're trying to build up the town or if you're trying to equip yourself with stuff, whatever the case, free loot. That's awesome. The other one is Persistence here. Whenever you long rest, you may regain the use of one of your persistent abilities. So this just is another way for you to get abilities back, and when you long rest, you get a use back. Very simple. It does take 2 perk points at once, though, to get this one. So keep that in mind. It's a little more expensive to get that one because it is pretty powerful when you think about it. And then Expanded Arsenal, you can carry an additional hand item into each quest. So you can essentially have 3 hand items instead of just the 2. So that's really good, especially if you get some good melee weapons or something, that maybe something that wounds, something that poisons. You could carry both of them into battle and still have your shield. And then Blessed ignores negative item effects and adds a +1 card. So this is how you would be able to wear your armor without having to take those negative modifiers from it. Because like I said, hide armor, earlier we talked about that. That would give you a negative modifier into your deck if you're not immune to that. This is how you'd be immune to that. So you definitely want to take this one as early as you can for the Drifter so you can wear heavier armor. Plus it does give you a +1 card, so that's nice. And then Ample Inoculation is you ignore quest effects and adds another +1 card. So both of these important to take as early as possible because you want to be immune to scenario effects. They're really annoying. And then being able to wear heavy armor is great. So these two are probably the first 2 I normally would take before doing anything else. Expanded Arsenal, Persistence, and Scavenger are a little more optional. Like, the extra loot's nice, but it's not necessary. There's probably better ways to spend your perks before doing that one. Persistence is really nice, especially if you're having trouble managing your persistent bonuses, or you just want that free one, that's good. Expanded Arsenal, also kind of optional. It's not necessary to have the extra item. It's just nice to have if you want to do that. And then once those are done, then we can talk about our regular perks here. So the top one here is Barge. You replace 2 zeros with 2 0 push rolling cards. So depending on the scenario, push can be really useful or it can just be kind of unnecessary. So that's kind of meh. Focus replaces -1s with +1s. So this is obviously, once we're trying to get rid of our negatives, take this one to 3 times in a row to get rid of 3 -1s, add in a bunch of +1s. Really, really ups our damage potential right there. Intensify gets rid of your -2 and adds a 0. So honestly, I would probably do this one first, then come back and do Focus. Puncture, replace 2 zeros with 2 piercing rolling cards. Those are really good, especially for those scenarios where you're fighting shielded enemies. This can come in handy. Retrace, replace 1 +1 with 2 zeros. Regain the use of one of your persistent ability cards. So we're going backwards on our numbers. I told you some of these were interesting. We're going backwards on our modifier, like, you know, numbers and having positives, but you regain the use of a persistent ability. So is that worth it to you or not? You know, if we're using crushing weight, you know, +2 attack is more than pulling a +1 card. So we pulled a +0, but we get, you know, regain the use of a persistent ability. So yeah, instead of attacking for 5, we attacked for 4, but then we got to recharge that ability so we can attack for 4 again later on. So there's some give and take. There's some consideration there. And then Cripple here would add a +2 Immobilize card, and you can do that a couple of times. And then Outburst adds a +3 card. And then Recover adds in 2 you heal self 1 rolling cards. So that's the perk. As far as what order to take these in, I don't really have a solid recommendation other than what I talked about, like these two first, obviously. And then after that, you might want to do Intensify to get rid of that 0, and then maybe start adding in these +1s. I would definitely add in a few +1s before you take Retrace, just so you don't, you know, take your +1s down to hardly anything. And this only happens twice, so you take out 2 +1s, and, you know, up here you'd be adding in 3 +1s, plus we added in +1s when we took Blessed and Ample Inoculation. So yeah, I would take these two first, maybe Intensify and then Focus, and then maybe go for Retrace for those uses back, or Puncture for the shield. It really just depends on, by that time in the game when you get to this point, you'll kind of have an idea of what's been causing you trouble and what you really want more. And there's a lot more nuance to perks in Frosthaven, so there's not really a wrong way to do it. It's just whatever is most important to you. Okay, and with that, let's go ahead and jump back over for one last thing to cover, and that would be the masteries. So every character in Frosthaven has a mastery, which is a quest specific to each character that gives you a free perk, essentially, once you complete it. You gain a perk mark right away. So this one, for the Drifter, he has Drifting on the Edge, is end of quest with 1 use left on 4 persistent abilities. Now, that can be quite difficult. So first of all, you have to have 4 persistent abilities active, and at the end of the quest, each one of them has to have 1 use left. I did get this one recently in my playthrough, and if you want to see that, you can check it out. I believe it was either episode 3 or 4. But this is hard to do. It can be very hard to do. You really have to manage and pay attention to your uses and getting uses back to get this. But it is possible. It is possible. And then the other one is Move Fast, Hit Hard. Never perform a move ability or attack with a value less than 4, and perform at least 1 move or attack ability each round. So this one sounds easy, but it's also very easy to mess it up because you forget, or if you get stunned, it completely ruins this. It won't work anymore because you have to not move and attack on 1 turn because you're stunned. If you get immobilized and you're not next to an enemy, it can mess this up. There's a lot of things that you can't really, I mean, you might be able to mitigate some of it, but you can't really control everything. So this one's can be actually harder than it sounds to get. I always think it's easier than it is, but the basics of it is, if you activate Crushing Weight and you activate your Momentum card for your movement, that means that even your basic attacks are 4 and your basic moves are 4, which satisfies the requirement of at least, you know, of all your attacks or moves being a value of at least 4. And then you have to at least do 1 of those every round. So on round 1, I might activate Crushing Weight, but then I'll still have to use a move 4 card to make sure I don't lose the second part of this. And then on the next turn, I better be able to attack somebody and do 4, so I can use the bottom to activate my move +2 ability. So it can be kind of hard to set up and get it going, and that one I haven't been able to get yet. So that is the Drifter and all of his Drifty Glory. He, again, is a really good character for a starting, if you're playing for the first time, he is a great beginner character for sure. And even though he's kind of simple, he actually is a lot of fun because of that simplicity. And it feels really cool to have all these active bonuses out there, and like you're super strong and you have all these extra things going on that buff you up that other characters aren't getting. It is a lot of fun to play this guy. I highly recommend him for anyone who, especially if you like playing a tanky character, he's really good for that. But again, support role, range character, all of it, he can do really, really well. So with that, don't forget to go ahead and check out my stream where I am playing this guy. Remember to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It really does help the channel out. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and keep on gaming.